Fox 61 News at 6 starts now.
Now it's 6, a foggy and gloomy day across the state, but all eyes are on the weekend, how your trick-or-treat forecast is shaping up.
And a final push for early voting.
I would say, who is this good for? Pretty much everyone. But fundamentally, this is about the voters.
The new campaign from local leaders as we're 2 weeks away from Election Day.
Plus, we're learning new details about the fatal shooting at a St. Louis high school, how Sandy Hook Promise is responding tonight.
And concerns from doctors as we head into the colder months about a triple threat of illnesses.
Right now, we don't have plans to have a field hospital, but we are calling in additional doctors and nurses to help out.
The impact on hospitals that COVID, the flu, and now RSV could have right here in Connecticut.
In Bloomfield, the efforts to back the blue in light of all the tragedy that happened in Bristol. I'm Jim Altman. We tell you more on the Fox 61 News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us here on the News at 6. I'm Ben Goldman.
And I'm Jen Bernstein.
New tonight, mayors and town leaders from all across the state gathered at the state capitol to talk early voting.
This November, Connecticut voters will decide if they want the option of voting in person before Election Day. That question coming in the form of a referendum on this year's ballot.
Fox 61's political reporter Emma Wolforst joining us live now with a message from those local leaders. Emma.
Ben, Jen, those at the Capitol earlier today saying democracy is on the ballot. Now, these municipal leaders are encouraging people to vote yes on that Connecticut Allow for Early Voting ballot referendum coming up in just 2 weeks. They say this will make voting easier and more accessible for people here in the state. They also say that this is a non-partisan issue, but some Republicans have spoken out against the initiative. This, as the Secretary of the State's office, is up for grabs.
It's about making it easier for every single resident to exercise their fundamental right to vote, and everybody wins when that's possible. Nobody loses.
If passed, this does not mean early voting immediately goes into effect here in Connecticut. What it would do is alter the state constitution to allow the legislature pass laws to provide for early in-person voting, meaning a voter does not have to provide an excuse for being unable to vote on Election Day.
I would say, who is this good for? Pretty much everyone. But fundamentally, this is about the voters.
Connecticut is currently only one of 4 states without early voting, and residents previously voted no to the question in 2014. But supporters say now the state is ready, calling early voting a no-brainer.
It's kind of ridiculous that we have not done this in Connecticut.
But not everyone is on board. Republican Secretary of the State candidate Dominic Rapini says the money and time spent to implement this in the state isn't worth it.
I do not think early voting is right for Connecticut. This is not where I want to put our money, right? And that's where, and our cities and towns don't have that money to do that. They got enough issues as it is.
Now, one question still unanswered, even if this referendum is passed in 2 weeks, just how early could residents here actually start voting? Well, Democrat Secretary of the State candidate Stephanie Thomas says if she's elected, she'll push for a 2 to 5 day period, but ultimately it'll be up to the state legislature to hash out those details. Live at the Capitol, Emma Wolforst, Fox 61 News.
Emma, thank you. And as you prepare for Election Day, our Secretary of the State wants us to know the process is secure. In our state, there are many steps happening behind the scenes to keep things confidential. Secretary of the State Mark Kohler says that we have partnerships with both federal and state cybersecurity and law enforcement agencies in place. They also work with the University of Connecticut, where before and after the election, a tech team reviews and examines our voting equipment to make sure it's intact.
One of the best checks and balances we have is that there are registrars from both parties. So there's kind of this built-in system of checks where it's going to be really hard for one party or one group to do something that the other side isn't going to be aware of.
And in terms of where your ballots are kept, it's all on paper. The most secure way to run local elections, that's according to Secretary of the State Kohler.
All right, let's get a check of your forecast. Another gloomy and mostly foggy day across the state. Check out the fog this morning over the Housatonic River in Southbury. So now the question is, when will we see the sun? It started breaking through in Hartford a little bit later today.
Yeah, I saw a blue sky as we were driving in. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised. the sun, Rachel. It's like this foreign concept.
Now it's back to the clouds, and it was just kind of a big tease. Tomorrow we are seeing more clouds, more showers, but this foreign concept, the sun that Ben was referring to, will finally return to the sky full time starting on Thursday. But one more day like this. Hartford 69 degrees, 66 for the New Haven area. The clouds and fog have moved right back in again, and you see that we kind of lost the tops of the buildings there in Hartford too. Today's high temperatures climbed into the 70s for a lot of areas, and the humidity too, just making it feel really odd, especially for a day in October with a lot of clouds. So the clouds have kind of filled back in again. There's a couple sprinkles out there. I mean, nothing major, maybe 1 or 2 drops on the windshield from Glastonbury down through Marlborough. You can see another one around Montville too. But more showers are coming in off the Atlantic Ocean, so the radar will fill back in again later tonight and as we head into tomorrow morning especially. And that patchy fog, I think, will develop too, and it could be locally dense. So tomorrow morning, it's wet, showers, some locally heavier downpours, and we'll see occasional rain, humid conditions heading through the day tomorrow, and mild temperatures before that sun returns full time. Your full forecast coming up.
Thank you, Rachel. Well, 2 teenagers have been charged after Southington police say they stole a car and fired shots from a handgun. Police say they responded to the parking lot of Garden Path Florist on Sunday around 1 a.m. for reports of a suspicious car. Police tell us it was determined that the car was stolen out of Bristol and that police learned that before they arrived. Police then used surveillance video to help identify the teens who had allegedly stolen the car. Police also saying that when they found the suspects, one had a handgun and that they admitted to officers that they fired a shot over the highway and another into a tree. Both teens are now facing multiple charges. Well, Wethersfield police are investigating a burglary at Fabulous Jewelry on the Berlin Turnpike. They say it happened around 10 this morning. The thief managed to break in through an empty store next to the building and fled before police got there. This is the second incident at Fabulous Jewelry in just 2 months. The store was also burglarized back in August. Wethersfield police ask that anyone who has any information, give them a call.
Enfield police are investigating a report of shots fired into a home. Police say it happened this morning in the area of Church Street and Alden Avenue. It's still unclear what exactly happened, but we're told that there were no reported injuries. The incident remains under investigation. On to the Health Watch here. The colder months typically bring on a variety of illnesses, but local hospitals are particularly concerned about this coming winter because a series of viruses have become prominent earlier than usual.
Fox 61's New Haven County Bureau reporter Tony Terzi joins us live from Yale New Haven Hospital with why this is happening. Tony.
Jan and Ben, good evening to you at home. You know, we all, of course, want our pre-pandemic lives back, or at least some semblance of them. And doctors I've spoken to said they don't think that's going to happen this winter, though. The triple threat Connecticut hospitals expect to be facing this winter includes RSV, the flu, and COVID.
The biggest concern is that this winter, if we do have a COVID surge, which a lot of us are anticipating, that all 3 viruses at once can really strain the resources of our healthcare system.
To the point where there's been discussion of constructing field hospitals similar to the ones built for COVID in 2020.
Right now, we don't have plans to have a field hospital, but we are calling in additional doctors and nurses to help out.
He says RSV is a common cold virus that hits the pediatric population very hard, but this year it's been worse because kids are just getting back together in large groups.
My own kids are a great example. We've really isolated since the beginning of the pandemic, and then this year we brought them back to school and daycare, and almost immediately we all got RSV.
Doctors, of course, recommend the flu and COVID vaccines to help avoid hospitalizations. But for those with concerns about receiving the COVID vax,
young men in particular can rarely develop a side effect from the COVID mRNA vaccines, the Moderna and the Pfizer, which leads to heart inflammation.
However, Dr. Roberts says in the vast majority of cases, the inflammation is mild and resolves on its own.
It's actually lower than the rate that COVID causes heart inflammation.
Now, Dr. Roberts says we could see an uptick in COVID across Connecticut over the next 2 to 3 weeks because right now Europe is seeing a surge, and it's usually several weeks after a surge in Europe when we are reintroduced to it. We're live here in New Haven. Tony Terzi, Fox 61 News.
Important information, Tony. Thank you. Well, the strike of Windham Hospital workers continued this morning. Local leaders, including Senator Richard Blumenthal and Congressman Joe Courtney and more, joined the workers on the front lines. The union says their main concern is the cost of their insurance. They also want fair wages and have been in negotiations with the hospital since December of last year. They say they haven't made any major progress.
We don't feel safe at work. You know, we're exhausted and, like I said, not respected. And we want it to be safe for our community, for our patients to come in and not have us all be exhausted trying to take care of them.
Now, the president of Windham Hospital has responded in a statement saying she's disappointed by the union's decision to walk out on patients. While these workers are on strike, the hospital says that they are making arrangements to fill their places to provide patient care. Today's strike will continue outside the Windham Community Memorial Hospital in Willimantic.
Well, happening tonight in Stonington, members of the Board of Education are expected to hold a special meeting to talk about the display of pride flags at schools. Board members will hear recommendations from the superintendent of schools and the chairman of the Board of Ed in support of allowing those flags. There will also be a chance for the public to comment tonight. Coming up on the news at 6:30, we'll have a live preview ahead of tonight's meeting.